areas, you were changing the interpretation in different areas of the piece to get different effects from it, and it was effective. I could notice it really well on this side, even through Zoom, where everything's kind of harder to tell. Like the just how short and how long your notes were, where they were staccato, and just keeping that length consistent where you wanted to keep things the same, and then it was slightly different in other areas where it was a little your interpretation was a little bit different. It adds kind of like more forward motion, I think, to the piece, just more continuity, I guess is a better word. Um, yeah, I don't know if that was two things or not, but yeah. And then something I would work on, I think, was there was just a couple spots where like the meter kind of got a little thrown off, and I think part of it was probably just like note confusion, but it didn't feel like it was like continuous. And if it were in a performance situation and you made a small mistake, it wouldn't be a huge problem as long as you pick back up and relatively quickly. Kind of that idea, just trying to keep the flow of the piece going in your head while you play, and not like fall off. You know what I mean? Because the notes will come with time with the wood shedding and stuff that we've talked about. So just getting the overall like arching phrases and stuff to still remain.
How about you, Charles? What did you think you liked about it?
Thank you all. That was very, very helpful information. I appreciate your comments. Um, I instantly knew when I was going through those phrases, and I was like, "Oh crap! Here we are again." I knew I was gonna rush them, and uh, I did it anyways. Just unintentionally, like just like a habit kind of thing. Um, that I seriously need to work on. You said, what do I work on while I'm talking about the things that I didn't like? Um, I think I started strong. I started each of the phrases strong, and I ended the phrases strong. In the middle, it was a little shaky here and there from like whether it be 16th note passages or tricky articulation passages, but I think overall it went pretty okay.
So I liked that you persevered. So even though it got shaky in a little couple little spots, it didn't affect your, and that's an important part of performing. We have to not sort of let the train, the wheels fall off the track. We keep on going no matter what. So that was really nice. And then I know there were a lot of things we've talked about in your lesson that I was hearing you do. I have a couple little comments. So still in that very, very opening, and I'm sorry, I totally forgot to turn on recording this thing until we started the conversation, so I did not get your playing. I'm sorry. For some reason, Zoom, when I set up this link, remember then I said it made an error. It said this link wouldn't work. And I had that one set up to automatically record, and this one I forgot to set to automatically record. So, anyways, but in the second, we've talked a lot about the articulation of those first two measures.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, can you play that for me right now?
Yeah.
In fact, why don't you play the first three measures for me? Actually, play four measures. Play the first four measures.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm sorry you don't have the recording to hear what first was, because that one was much better. So whether it was just your starting out beginning nerves, I just feel like the articulation wasn't as clear at the beginning. It was a little clunky in that third measure, a little too heavy on the Fs. So what you did just now, that was much better.
Thank you.
Um, in line 6, when you have the can you be much more aggressive with that? I know there's just this little crescendo there, but it's our first time we're really going to kind of come out of our shell and show it. So you need to be a little more showcasey, and definitely a little more aggressive, more outgoing there. First, you just try right on it. So this is line 6, the first measure.
Yep. Yep.
Good. So the challenge is then to back off by the time you get to the high B. So let's put it in context. You start the line before on your whole note C.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, So part of that challenge is because you're coming out of this, da, 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 we're kind of just throwing that away, right? But then we have to come in with a little bit more aggression. So try to make that connection a little bit better. You can do it one more time. So it's a line change. You've got to rest. You've got to quickly, make that switch of what kind of playing you're going to do. So one more time, same thing. Remember, we've talked a lot about not being stagnant on long notes. Music is always going somewhere or coming away. So you did a little bit of it. I could hear a little bit of the intensity building, but can you do a little bit more for the whole note C?
Yeah.
So think about that when you're practicing. I feel like you hit the low G, but I don't feel like you're getting us to the low G.
Okay.
It feels like da 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 dum, and then we sort of land on it. I want to be da 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 da. So make sure these 16th notes are what feels like are carrying that energy. You want to try right on it again?
Yeah.
On the 16th notes? That was better. So now what you need to do is play it like that when you're coming from the stuff before it. And that's challenge. So one of the things you can do is put a big rest in between. Right now you've got 1 beat of rest. Give yourself 4 beats to really prepare and make sure that feels really good. And then do it with 3 beats and then 2 beats and eventually as it's written. So it's learning. We've got these 2 very different things that we have to do. Kind of like when Kevin was doing the Weber last time. You've got forte and the piano. You've got this, but you know what I'm talking about in the theme. But same thing, okay? So talking about making sure there's motion going to the line, 2 lines later, that high A flat whole note, same thing, it felt really stagnant. So don't get too loud. I know it says forte, maybe at the end of the measure you're forte, but don't arrive at forte. Can you start after letter C where you come in on your C half note? And again, each one of these longer notes needs to feel like it's taking us somewhere.
Okay.
Good. So again, those 16th notes should just kind of feel tossed off and light, but that was so much better for those long notes. You really felt like you were doing something with them. And we don't want to just sit there. We always want to feel like we're doing something. Okay, so that was much better. Do you hear the little glitch when you go from F to A flat in that second measure? And that brings me to the next topic, is when we hear you, first of all, if you're not hearing when you have those little glitches, record yourself. Record yourself and play it back slower and you really hear them. The technique in the clarinet is challenging, okay? Sometimes we're pressing something down, sometimes we're opening things up, sometimes we're going from A to B and every single finger's moving even though one note difference. So never two notes are the same. It's always changing. And so we have to listen and be very careful that we're not getting extra little notes. So for example, let's look at page 2, line 1, 2, 3, 4, last measure. Can you play that measure for me? That's the beginning of all this 16th note noodly stuff. Yeah, so that was pretty good, but sometimes that gives us a little bit of trouble getting from the F sharp to the A, right? So, in fact, why don't you play the next measure for me? Yeah, did you hear some of those? So for example, the last one was the biggest bloop from the E to G. So we know on our technique in our clarinet, tendency if you're going to go up is for the bottom notes to pick up first. So one of the things you can practice is purposefully doing the opposite. So I want you to play E. Do that for me. So we're going to hear the F sharp instead of an F natural.
So E, F sharp.
So you're going to, yeah, exactly. So it's that both fingers should move together. But right now we're suspecting the bottom fingers jump on the gun just a little bit. So we want to practice by purposely picking up that first finger. Can you do a little faster? Ba-da-dum. Now play E to G as it's supposed to be. So sometimes it's a nice little quick band-aid by knowing which finger is being sluggish and purposely practicing it wrong by making that finger be fast. Jump the gun. Do it a few times, and just that awareness often will fix the problem. So I suggest you do that with each of these measures individually, slowly, whether it's F sharp to A, that case it was E to G, the C to the E was a big bloop in the next measure. So there's just a lot of intervals here that are really easy for your fingers not to be 100% together. And then that what gives it sort of that messy feel too, because we're just hearing extra notes. So slow practice, like Kevin said, absolutely will help really solidify that. Working on just 2 note intervals and being aware of which fingers being a little slow and practicing the opposite. Aaron, I think, had made the comment you can do the first, or maybe it was Zach, play the first 2 notes and then play the 3 notes and 4. So each measure kind of attack it, on its own little finger twister. So, 2 notes, 3 notes, 4 notes, 5 notes until you get all the way up to 9 notes. Then you can go backwards, play notes 8 and 9, 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, 9, and keep adding a note that way. So the more ways you can train your muscle memory, but it has to be accurate. So don't practice it fast or messy because it will take you 10 times to undo that fast and messy. You're better off just doing under tempo, being slow here and being more worried about the accuracy of it and think of speed as the final frontier. Of course, we know how fast it's supposed to go. We all know this piece. But if you're not there yet, don't want to practice your mistakes. Practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. And it's much harder to undo those little finger glitches. I think that's it. So do you have any questions about what people said or?
No. Thank you for all your feedback, though. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a tough piece. You're doing a great job with it, and hopefully you'll keep having fun with it. Aaron, I think that means you're up.
Oh boy.
How much of it do you want to play, Aaron? Do you have any idea? Or?
Um, can I stick to just the first movement?
Just number 1? Okay.
Yeah.
You play. I just heard you play them. You're doing great with them. Start with the 1 and see how you feel about it afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't know if it's your Zoom settings or are you guys having when she plays a long sustained note, does it cut out for you sometimes? Yeah. So good old Zoom. So do check your setting just to make sure you have it so it doesn't uh, background noise is what sometimes it thinks when you're sustaining a long note, it likes to cut out. All right, who would like to go first? All right, Zach.
So really nice job. I love this piece. It's been a while. So the first thing I noticed was obviously this being a bass clarinetist probably helps with this, but your tone quality in the shallow mode, the low register is really good through Zoom anyway, as far as I can tell. It sounded really well rounded and full, like really good. And overall, like everything, it sounded really well polished for the most part. Throughout the whole thing, I was just impressed with how like put together it is, considering how anxious you were. It was pretty well, there. The only thing that I noticed that I would work on is that it started a little bit in the beginning, but about like halfway through, it started to get a little bit faster, progressively. And then by the time you were at the end, it was a good, I don't know how many like beats exactly, but it was a good bit faster than at the beginning. And this movement, I had the exact same problem, if I remember correctly. It like wants to be slower, but it's tempting to play faster. So just trying to be conscious of it, I guess, and practicing with a metronome and you know, to make sure you know where you're at. But other than that, it was really good job.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? All right, Kevin.
I thought it was really fun. I've never heard the piece and I don't have the music, but I appreciated. Well, I'll say three things because I really like the tone in your lower range, as Zachary said. I enjoyed. Of course, it's kind of difficult to tell on Zoom, but as far as I could tell, the phrasing seemed nice with little shifts and dynamics here and there where it seems appropriate, and I think it worked really pretty well. And the other thing I was going to say is I don't remember. Sorry. There's one good thing and one bad. Sorry, not bad. Charles, you can go next if you want. I'll keep thinking about it.
All right. Well, fantastic job with the piece. I've never heard it as well. So this was the first time hearing it. It sounded awesome. I really liked your it seemed like you had a lot of like motion throughout the piece. It didn't feel like it was really like still at any point. Um and again with the tone, like the lower range, it was like so clear, like it was crystal clear. I really did enjoy the you have a good low range. Um and one thing I would work on, shoot, I was trying to think of one while Kevin was going, and I'm still at a loss. Can you play it again?
Nothing, guys, huh? Kevin, did you remember?
I thought of mine in case you
Okay,
need that.
sure.
So the other good thing I heard, I felt like it was very kind of like deliberate. I feel like each note got its weight. It wasn't like it was just the beginning and the end and everything in between. It felt like it progressed in a logical way and in a very it was like a journey between beginnings and ends of phrases. Um, one thing I would work on with reference to tone quality within multiple ranges. There was at least one bit where it leaped a little bit higher, and some of the tone quality was a little bit lost. So that's something that I would really look at. Maybe try. I know I've been doing this with the Weber, kind of separating them and starting with the high range and really focusing on tone, and then putting them together afterwards.
Adding on to his tone, when you jump high ranges like that, you tend to just like uh, you play harder when you're trying to get to like the higher note, at least because you're trying to control it more. Um, just be careful dynamic wise. I know I struggle with this, as you heard my piece. Yeah, dynamic wise, it is tough. So just I guess, yeah, you could do what Kevin said to do.
All right, guys. Lots of good comments here. I know it's harder to sometimes. Well, we can listen without looking at music, but it's sometimes harder to know as far as detailed comments when you don't have the piece of music in front of you. So I appreciate your playing along. We actually, Aaron and I were just working at this an hour and a half ago or something. And one of the things we talked about in this particular movement was sort of deciding where is each phrase. Where is the climax within each phrase? I had her actually pencil them all in, knowing that it's pencil, right? You can always change it later. There's no right answers. As I was telling her, this isn't math class. You know, it's not 1 + 1 is 2. This is more like art class, right? Everybody draw a tree. And then, okay, the teacher's going to grade them at the end. You know, there's biases that go in that. Maybe the teacher doesn't like the colorful fall ones. Maybe, you know, it's more prone to the green evergreens, or likes the Charlie Brown Christmas trees. So anyways, when we listen to music, you know, so much of our own, which is why you guys should remember that when you're doing panel evaluations, and they don't have music in front of them either. And since they're never a clarinetist, they may not even know the pieces you're playing. Osborne. So anyways, all good information to have. So I think that's really thoughtful that Aaron has been doing that and really thinking about the phrases. One of them, though, Aaron, the third phrase we talked about, you were going to make that the B that was the one place where you're changing your mind because I felt like that's not how you played it. So again, that's what's fun about it is you get to make those decisions. I can't say what's right or what's wrong. I might say, that one sounded a little bit different or a little bit out of place, and you have to convince your audience, or in this case, your panel evaluation people, that the choices you made make musical sense. The one thing, Aaron, I would continue to work on is breathing. Aaron, as you guys know, really has been a bass clarinet player, and you've been playing clarinet for how many months now?
Like actually playing for probably about 2.5, I think. Yeah.
Not bad, huh? Not bad for never, she's got the clarinet over winter break, and anyway, so she's doing a great job. And so breathing, you would think, oh, I played a huge tube, now I'm playing a little tube, but it's still making those adjustments of how do I breathe, when do I breathe, how long does it take to breathe, how do I make the breathing part of the music? And we all get caught up as wind players. We're learning something, we're putting the metronome on, but remember when you're playing music, especially when you're performing this either with a pianist or in this case maybe without, it's okay to take a little bit of time in a piece like this, right? This is a folk song study. This is not a metronomic piece. So it's okay to take a little bit of time. And if you're working with a pianist, the pianist too would mark it, oh, she's going to breathe there and take that with it. If you heard a singer, they wouldn't go racing through it or chop off a note in order to fit that breath in. They take whatever time they need, okay? So sometimes as soloists, we have to remember we have a lot more freedom than when we're playing in a band or an orchestra, right? And the person up there waving the wand is going to go on without us. Okay, so take that freedom that you might need to take enough these big breaths that are needed for these long sustained notes. And then yes, your comrades were right. Sometimes you like to rush. So even though we don't want to be metronomic, using your metronome to when you're practicing, and then we talk about weaning it off. So maybe you just have it on the light and not the sound, so you can still sort of check in to make sure you're doing it okay and keeping that same tempo. Zach, yep.
I'm just thinking back to when I did this piece, like in the exact same situation. I remember having issues with breathing also, and I was just listening to you talking about getting enough air in, making sure you take enough time to breathe. I remember feeling like I had excess air, and by the end of the piece, like halfway through, I was having to breathe out before I could breathe in. So what helped me was actually breathing in less, like taking only partial capacity of air in, because if I took too big of a breath like I was used to having to take for the bass clarinet, I just had way too much, and it's not that I was out of air. I just had so much CO2 buildup. My brain was telling me I needed to breathe when I still had a bunch of air
That's a
left
good
in
point,
my
Zach,
lungs.
because these phrases really about 4 bars, so you don't necessarily need a big breath, but you do need to phrase it, and so you do need to breathe. So taking that time to remind yourself to fully exhale during the notes before you're going to take that breath in, or as Zach said, sometimes maybe not take that big bass clarinet breath that we're used to, so we don't end up with stale air inside. Yeah. And then, yes, as far as, part of that tone issue is because the clarinet is so new to you and it's just much more resistant. So we get up there, and that's long tones and figuring out reeds and all that stuff as far as matching tone quality. But absolutely practicing the notes before and after and really trying to hear to match the tone quality. But thank you so much for playing, Aaron. I know that I just completely sprung on your lesson, and you're a good sport to have done it. I think it's really important just to have that experience of playing for your colleagues. So I'm really glad you did that. And then we have some Gordon Jacob.
Do we have time for all five?
Yeah.
Great. So this is the Gordon Jacob 5 pieces for unaccompanied clarinet. I believe some of you are already familiar with it. This will be, some of the movements will be up to tempo, some of them will not be. But yeah, here we go. completely goofed those eighth notes at the end, but moving on.
see all the page. Nice job. It's one of the biggest challenges I think is that there are 5 short, very different movements, and you really have to just keep switching your costumes and different hats on. And then the names that he gave them sort of give us, an idea of what we have to think about and do for each of these. All right, so who would like to start? Aaron, go for it.
Okay, so I'm gonna go in chronological order. The first movement, I really liked how the dynamics were present. I think this was something I commented on like last studio. Was like how maybe sometimes they were and sometimes they weren't, but in the first movement, I think it was pretty consistent and they were there, which was really awesome. I think where am I? In the fourth movement, fourth, yes, yeah, fourth movement. There's a lot of like build up in the chromatics in the fourth line. I think you could I don't this is more like musical interpretation. I think you could probably milk that a little bit more. I would just like make my ear happy. I think and you did that in I think it's the second movement. Anyways, there's a movement where there's more chromatics and I think you did what I want you to do in another one, but just not in that one. Um so I guess just to work on it would probably just be like make it more dramatic, just all over.
Excellent. Thank you. Who else? Zach, you got your hand up first.
Yeah, so nice job. First thing that I wanted to say that was good about this was that in the third movement, I remember having a lot of issues with the staccato high C. When I first did that, that was I spent a lot of time working on that. So that section and that whole movement and the articulations in that movement sounded pretty together. Obviously, nothing's ever perfect, but it sounded really like foundationally there. And the other thing was just overall the way that you captured like the different feels of each movement. Like Professor Leonard was saying, they're three completely different five completely different movements, and they sound like completely different pieces. I remember that also being a little bit of a struggle, just getting my head into the mindset of the next movement so quickly between. So I thought you did a good job differentiating between them, providing that contrast. One thing that I would focus on for working on it, and this goes across all five movements because I think I noticed it in each one at some point, was, and obviously this also comes from just being more comfortable with the notes, but there were a couple places where the rhythms started to feel like they were like speeding up and slowing down a little bit. Some places felt like it was more musical, like it was like you were trying to, and that I'm not sure is great for the composer because he is contemporary, so he kind of like tells you what to do. So you want to avoid that. And then if there is that happening in any piece, usually you want it to kind of be like robbing time. So like a section will be a little slower and then a section will be a little faster, but the average speed is about the same. There were just sections that felt like that was thrown off a little bit and it made it feel a little uncomfortable. I think if you fix that, it would make a huge difference in the overall like quality of what's happening. But other than that, it was a really nice job.
And Charles.
Awesome choice for pieces, I guess. I've played the first and the fourth ones, so I can kind of that's kind of what I wanted to focus my comments on. Um, in the first one, you had, I mean, all throughout the pieces, you had such great tone and you were consistent like the whole time. Um, there was one section in particular. I'm trying to look for it. Your build-ups. Your build-ups with like at least in this first one, I believe it's on the second to last line. Um well, the fall down followed by the build up, I thought that was brought out like extremely well. You kind of you defined that really well. I couldn't entirely tell, was was the eighth note thing at the end of that, was that like did you speed that up on accident, or did you just
I think, if I remember, I just played them as 16th notes.
okay, because I was gonna say I kind of liked the way you played it. I was like, oh cool, this is like, this got some speeding up and slowing down motion to it. Anyways, one thing I want to point out towards most of these things, I more so noticed it in the very last piece, in the trio section. Just it could just be a zoom thing, but dynamic. Just be careful, dynamic wise, because I think that section's supposed to be a little softer. And at least from Zoom's perspective, it kind of sounded a little louder than what I would imagine a piano would sound like. But that could also just be a Zoom thing. So yeah, just dynamic wise throughout the piece, pay attention to the little spots where like you can get suddenly quiet and whatnot. Other than that, awesome job. Awesome job.
Kevin, we're gonna run out of time, and I'm gonna see you on Friday. So I took a whole page of notes. Were you playing off an electronic copy or your written copy?
Yeah, I didn't have my written copy for this, but I'll have it Friday.
So you made a lot of errors of notes in movement 4, and I think it was all accidents that carry through. You kind of missed them all each time they happened. So I started to see the pattern. I think, I don't think he's got his written part in front of him. So I'm guessing you've already fixed that in your written part, and that's the challenge of playing off a computer, because you don't have all your notes in there. All right, well, we will go over those comments at your lesson on Friday. I will see everybody on Friday. Just a quick, is there any progress on the English dance? I know I saw Aaron had sent out a click track. Has anybody started recording that yet or anything? Or
No
I'm
recordings
sorry,
yet,
I
I don't
didn't
think.
realize I was still muted. I'm probably finding I'm
Aaron, you
getting
sent that to
recordings.
everybody, right?
I
Okay.
got it. Yeah.
All right. So if you guys want to start getting going in that, I think it would be, even if it's the only one we do, it would be kind of fun to have one for the end of our recital. And we're now getting, it's only been a month away. So, all right. So see if you can get going on that. And we'll have another studio class in 2 weeks. Let me know if you want to perform for that. And I will see all of you on Friday. Have a great night, guys. Thanks so much for showing up.